We welcome all the participants for today's Academic Connect and Interaction Initiative with Academia. Topic for today's session is impactful business communication for managerial success. As we know, effective business communication is essential for success and growth of every organization. To know more about this, we have with us today Professor A. Dinesh from Shiva Shivani Institute of Management, Hyderabad. Welcome you, sir. I also welcome our beloved director, Dr. AGV Narayanan, and Chief Executive Officer, Captain Senthil Kumar, faculty members, students, and all participants. Now, I request my friend Kalimuthu to introduce the speaker.
Good morning, everyone. I am very happy to introduce our today's speaker, Professor Dinesh. Professor is in the field of communication with a demonstrated history of working in higher education, skilled in public speaking, English language teaching, education, university teaching, and teaching methods. Strongly educational professional with a PhD focus in English language study from University of Hyderabad. He is presently working in SSIM Business School, Hyderabad, as Assistant Professor in Communication. His research interest: managerial communication, business communication, soft skill for management, English for specific purpose, collaborative learning, leadership psychometry. He has won many awards, presented papers in many national conferences. He is a member of Association of Business Communication in India, member of Systematic Functional Linguistic Association. Now I request the speaker to take over the session. Please, sir.
Thank you, Nandini and Kalimuthu, for your welcome address and for introducing me. Thanks a lot. First of all, I'd like to, am I audible, sir? Great.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Very good morning to everyone present here, and then for those who join from different institutions, warm welcome to you all. First of all, I'd like to thank DJ Academy for giving me this opportunity to interact with our friends, student friends. Thank you, Dr. Narayanan sir, for giving me this opportunity, and Professor Sriraman sir for giving me this opportunity. Before we start today's discussion, I just happened to look at the website of DJ Academy. I really surprised by looking at the expertise that you guys are having, and more specifically the connects that you are giving to our students. So that's something which is phenomenal that very few business schools in our country is doing. Like students, you guys are really blessed enough to be part of DJ Academy, where you guys are really having a constant interaction, not just for the sake of interacting, have constant interaction with corporates, with CXOs, alumni, academic, and even student contact. So it was really a spellbound initiative by the institution. So first I'd like to congratulate the whole team for taking this, which is because in this new normal, students might be quite boredom with their regular traditional classroom with their regular faculty. But when they have an opportunity to contact or communicate with the different faculty members across the country, I'm sure that the expertise would be more. So in that ground, students, you guys are really blessed to be part of DJ Academy. So congrats on that. And then apart from that, I'd like to say quite a few things about students. I looked at the faculty profile at DJ Academy. Yesterday, our director, sir, have sent your biannual newsletter, which clearly embarks the institute's standard, which is really in par with top premier business schools. So, which is really an interesting thing, which is so happy to collaborate with DJ Academy for today's session. So once again, a warm welcome you all. So let's jump into our presentation for the day. So is my screen visible, sir?
Yeah, perfect, sir. Perfect.
Great. Thank you. So as we all know, for today's presentation of today's discussion, the topic is impactful business communication for managerial success. Okay. When we think of this topic, people, when you guys would have thought about, when you guys have received the notification about this talk, I'm sure that several things might have went in your mind. Okay, this is after this session, we are going to acquire communication. But I'd like to give a quick disclaimer before that I'm not a magician who can just do a spell in just 1 hour to make you guys to speak a fantabulous, spontaneous communication. But what I can drive you during this session would be the aspects which will make you to be a successful business communication, and that in line can lead you to a successful managerial communication is what the primary objective of today's presentation. Okay, so before we get into that aspect, I just have quick basic hygiene for today's discussion. So I request the student participants, you guys can stop at any stage when you guys have any question for during the discussion. If you have any question, either you can straight away unmute and then you can respond. If not, you have an option, you can raise your hand, and then I'm sure that Professor Sri Raman sir can help you assist in that. If not, you can just put it in the chat box and we can just later get back to it. So you guys feel free to communicate at any stage, because communication is a process, it's not an end product. So during the process, when there's a difficulty, when there's a learning, if you guys require, we are ready to, we'll definitely we'll take a note of it, and then we'll just try to look into it. And then, as I said before, as I gave a disclaimer, there's one more thing I just want to know. These days, which most of the time I use in my class, these days, millennials have a common syndrome, which is called as INE syndrome. Can anyone tell what does that INE syndrome, which is quite simple?
You know everything.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly.
You asked the students.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. It's I know everything. So, which is pretty common that we all feel that, okay, when we discuss about this topic, we feel that, yes, I know that. But here is the cautious statement. There's always a difference between knowing something and doing something. Are we just knowing something, the effectiveness of communication? Are we really just knowing the importance of time management? Are we just really knowing the significance of soft skills? There's a huge difference between knowing something and doing something. So in that case, we would be reiterating on the basics of how to build effective business communication that can lead to a successful managerial communication is what we'll be looking into it in today's session. So hope students are ready for today's session, and then you guys are looking forward for today. Are you ready for to spend a little bit of your brain sugar for today's session? If yes, please raise your hands. You have an option, I guess, in the chat box so that I can just have a look at it. Yes. How many of you are really ready? Please. Okay, I can see good number. Thank you. Thank you. Fantastic. Thanks for the response. Thanks for the response, team. Okay, so let's please put down your hand. Thank you. So let's start with today's discussion. So before we move on to the significance of communication, there's a quick tidbit about today's session. About business communication, which is 60% of the people face a crisis at least once a month due to communication issue. So in the corporate world, minimum 60% of people face at least a crisis during the in a month they face a communication related issue. And then 29% of employees says that poor internal business communication leads to a project failure. So you guys are into management education. So you guys happen to interact. After this, your post-graduation, you would be in a corporate world where you would be working with teams. So during that, 29% of employee feels that poor internal business communication. What is internal business communication? That happens within the organization. So because of ineffective business communication within the organization, that leads to project failure. Almost 46% of employee leaves a meeting not knowing what they are supposed to do next. Again, a statistical data which says that they're clueless about if 100 people attend, they just attend and then they're not very sure, okay, let us get back and let us understand later. So they get into that mindset. So I hope and I wish that our session today would not be in that front. So, and then there's a few more tidbits where 2 hours and 10 minutes amount of time people waste every day at work when they have ideally for 8 hours a day in a work. they spend almost an average of 2 hours and 10 minutes they're wasting in a day, out of which 1 hour and 38 minutes is due to effective communication practice in the organization. Okay, we looked at quite a few negative aspects of ineffective communication, but what a positive or an effective or an impactful communication in a business world can happen? That's for you, the 6th point. Employee who feels like they are genuinely listened. So you being a manager, future managers, when you feel that you're trying to listen to your employee, then they genuinely work towards the improvement of the company and for the organizations, 5 times more likely to have a higher job enthusiasm and 21 times more likely to feel committed to the job. So here, the key significance that we are trying to look at is how being a manager, listening plays a very significant role in managerial communication. So being a future managers, when you get into a corporate world, you should listen and then you should try to understand from what perspective your team is trying to say. And that can definitely lead to a good managerial position. Okay. So I just happened to go through the previous talks which DG Academy conducted. So I just happened to look at Dr. M.V. Subha ma'am's presentation on a presentation recently from Anna University, Coimbatore, where this was her concluding thought. I felt it, okay, let me start from there, because her concluding slide clearly discussed the relevance for today's communication. So I thought to start from there. So which I consider a relay race. So I just want to start with that. And I'm sure that you know these 5 people from Tamil Nadu who are representing 4x400 athletics meet. So I'm trying to do a similar process. So where Shubha ma'am discussed about equipping yourself, equip yourself and seek inspiration. Let learning be a continuous process. Collaborate with people. Be ready. Soft skills are a necessary thing. Be brave and be passionate. Right? So if you see, out of these 6 points, 4 points primarily revolves around the significance of communication. Collaborating with people, good interpersonal communication is something that is being required. And then be ready, be assertive, be agile. When you communicate in a corporate world, we have to be more agile. It's not just in corporate world. Once you enter into a management institution, we are expected to be more agile. And that's something ma'am is trying to say, be ready, always be proactive, and then try to look for an opportunity and seize it. In philosophy, they call that as carpe diem, seize the day. And soft skills are a necessary aspect. So in today, primarily, we are looking at communication and how that can lead to it. Yeah. So World Economic Forum, given what are the top skills which a management students or a graduate should possess when they enter into a job market. So these are the top 10 skills which are highlighted for the year 2015 and for the year 2020. If you look at these skills, a greater significance of importance is given to communication. In 2015, coordinating with others, it's again a people skill, people management, negotiation, and then active listening. So out of 10, 40% is given to importance of communication and importance to language skills. So this clearly embarks the significance of communication. And in 2010, it remains the same to a greater extent. So only there are 2 skills that have been updated from 2015 to 20. If you look at complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people's management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence, judgment and decision making, service orientation, negotiation, and cognitive flexibility is a key word that it has been updated in the year 2020 top skills that has been required. So what is cognitive flexibility? Cognitive flexibility is nothing but having an interdisciplinary knowledge. It's not that being when I happen to interact with management students during their placements, I keep repeating this statement: why have you chosen marketing as your major? Sir, I don't like maths. I don't like numbers. I don't like finance. So that should not be a reason why you like marketing. Or when I ask why you have chosen finance, I'm good at numbers. Or I don't speak much. My communication is not that effective, so I've chosen finance. that should not be a reason why we have chosen our specialization. So cognitive flexibility, the multidisciplinary knowledge is something that is prerequisite, though that's not my domain for today's discussion. So let's look into the communication aspect of it. So recently, IFIM Business School and NHRD, they came out with a survey, which, I mean, what we seen in the previous slide is a global expectation or the global skills that has been expected. NHRD and IFIM came out with the top skills, which is recently conducted in the year 2019, where what are the top skills that have been expected from a management institution when they join an organization. So these are the top 10 skills that the survey has conducted. So this survey is being conducted from top managerial managers across the country, and then they have gathered data what they are looking for in a fresher, those who comes from management education. So out of which, these are the top 10, out of which again 40% is given to the significance of communication. You look at this, out of 100 just for communication, they have given 40%. Oral and written communication, people and team organization, cross-cultural communication or cross-cultural orientation, managing self, how we can present ourselves better. So these are the 4 aspects that I'm trying to emphasize, reinstate in this presentation going forward. So yes, now we have looked at the relevance of communication in the global arena as well as an Indian expectation from a management perspective. We set the stage why communication is required and what amount of communication is required. So I just like to, before I get into the discussion, I just want to quickly connect the difference between soft skill and hard skills. What is hard skill and what is soft skills? Guys, you guys can just think, I mean, you guys can unmute and then you can give your response if you have any. What do you guys think as soft skill and what is hard skill? Yes? Any response from students?
Soft skill is something that we already possess, sir. Whereas in hard skill, we attain through any of the training session or through our education, anything it can be.
Okay, good, ma. Okay. As I said, there's nothing right and wrong. Everyone have the complete freedom to express your thoughts. Yes. Any other observation? Okay.
Dinesh, you can look at the chat box. Couple of answers are there.
Yes. Bala Subramanian have mentioned act of doing in hard skill. Okay. Act of doing is hard skill. Great. Okay. Nitya has mentioned soft skill related, how we work. Okay. Act of thinking is soft. Okay, good. I mean, yes, quite a few responses from students. I'm sure that you would be responding as well. So typing in the chat box as well. So hard skill, I mean, to define that in very simple terms, hard skill is your subject knowledge, how you acquire your technical skills, your specialization. Soft skill is how you present it. Even after acquiring fantastic hard skills, if we are in a position, if you're not in a position to present it in the right way, then how much ever we acquire our hard skill, our technical skill, our core skill, our specialization would not be a right thing. So your success of hard skill is defined by the way you present your soft skill. It's to define it in even more simple terms. Hard skill is like cooking. Soft skill is like serving it. If you're after preparing a delicious food, if you're not serving it properly, then it won't really good. If someone after preparing a fantastic Hyderabadi biryani and then just throw it away, it won't really taste that great. So the point is, soft skill is that defines the success of your hard skill, and that's something which is prerequisite, and that's being emphasized by, one second. Yes, by an American academician and an practitioner, IT practitioner, where he says you can have brilliant ideas, but if you can't get them across, your ideas won't get you anywhere. So the success of your idea is defined by the way we present it. So that's the significance of communication, and that's the relevance of communication if we want our idea to be successful or it to be moved from one to the other. Yes. Okay, I'm sure that you would be getting to know what are the 4 basic language skills. I've shared the slide. So there are quite a few skills that every language is which possess. That's listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We call that as LSR and W. LSRW. So listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And the sub skills are grammar and vocabulary are the 2 sub skills to any language, irrespective of language. If you want to, if you go to Tokyo to watch Olympics, if you want to learn Japanese, then Japanese has the same 4 skills. And if the Japanese people want to come to Tamil Nadu and want to watch Rajinikanth movie, then they would, if they want to pick up Tamil, then they would. Tamil has these 4 plus 2 language skills, 4 basic language skills, and then 2 sub skills. The same with any language. If you want to go to German, if you want to go to Spanish, so every language have these 4 plus 2 sub skills, which is the 4 basic skills are LSRW, that's listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and the sub skills are grammar and vocabulary. So in this session, we'll be looking at how we are going to enhance these aspects and how we can go about it. Before I move to the next slide, I have a quick question to the participants. So as I said, communication is as similar as you're practicing swimming. If you coming to a pool and then if you just refrain, then jumping into the pool, I mean, it won't really make sense. So you guys have to test the waters. You guys get into the pool and then see how you can paddle it. So in that regard, when I ask question, please try to respond. Nothing wrong if your answer is not absolute, I mean, not correct. So no, don't worry about that. Whatever that comes into your mind, you guys can respond. So out of these 4 skills can be broadly divided into 2 skills. Can anyone guess what are those 2 skills? These 4 skills can be divided into 2 primarily. These 4 LSRW can be divided into 2 aspects. Can anyone guess what are those 2? Guess, wild guess. Written and oral, great. I can see answer from, okay, I can see from Captain Sendil sir. Listening and speaking, fantastic, yes. Any more response? If you want, you can unmute and you can also speak. How these 4 skills, LSRW, can be classified into 2? Yes. Okay, maybe let me move on to the next slide and then that will give you a broader picture about what are those. 1 second, I'm trying to move. Next slide. Yeah. So these 4 skills can be divided into receptive and productive skills. Receptive and productive. Okay, again, a second question. Out of those 4 skills, LSRW, what are receptive and what are productive? I'll give you a clue. Receptive has 2 and productive has 2 skills. So these 4, these 2 can be, what are those 2? I mean, what are those LSRW where they 4 can fit into receptive? What are the receptive skills and what are productive skills? You guys can unmute and say, or you guys can respond in chat. Okay, LR is receptive, great. LW is receptive, good. Okay, I can see good response. Yes, a little more, it would be even more interesting. Okay. Okay, receptive, listening and reading, great, Manoj. Priyadarshini, listening and reading, fantastic. Great. LR is receptive, fantastic. As most of you rightly said, listening and reading are receptive skills. And what are productive skills? I'm again looking at the chat box. What are productive skills? Writing and speaking. Great. 1 second, I'm just trying to change the slide. Yes. So receptive and productive skills. So as we discussed, receptive skills, we receive knowledge, we acquire knowledge, we gain knowledge in receptive skills, and productive skills is what we produce knowledge. We generate knowledge in this. So people who look at productive skills, sir, I want to improve my speaking proficiency. What should I do? As simple as that. Your focus should be on listening. If you feel that you have a problem with your speaking, then the point of contact should be listen a lot. As much as you listen, that much proficiency you will be in your speaking. If you read well, that will have a direct impact in your writing. So that's the connection between the four skills, which is LSRW, which is receptive and productive. So people will feel that it's, if you take a classic example of your language, of your mother tongue, when we were a newborn baby, we would not utter a sentence or a word or a syllable. Rather, we acquire our language, our mother tongue, by listening, by receptive. We listen. As much as we listen, that much that we can produce. So the key point of, if you want to improve your communication, irrespective of whether it's business communication or managerial communication or leadership communication, whatever that for that matter be, if you feel your communication that needs to be improved, then the point of contact is listening. If you can emphasize on listening, then your speaking has a tick mark. If you feel you have acquired a good reading skill, that will have a direct impact on your writing. So that's the connect between these four skills, and that's how it's been presented. So as I discussed, when you listen, it's a receptive where you acquire vocabulary and we produce knowledge, we start to speak, and speaking from there we lead to reading, where when we read, we comprehend information, then that will impact in our better writing. Because people might be asking, sir, won't listening impact our writing? Yes, listening can impact, but the better impact for writing has in reading. Because when you read, or when we read, we try to understand the sentence structure, grammatical formation, punctuation. All these aspects we'll try to acquire consciously and unconsciously, and that will have a direct impact in our writing. So if you feel that your writing has to be improved, the direct point of contact should be reading. If you feel that your speaking has to be improved, then the direct point of contact has to be listening. And that's how your language proficiency can be updated and that can be acquired. And then I'm sure that you guys would be, understand or agree with that. If someone hasn't want to disagree, please do let me know. We have 2 ears and 1 tongue, so that we could listen more and talk less. So especially when we are in our formative stage, we have to keep listen as much as possible, and that will have a direct impact. That's what expertise is all about. As much as we acquire, that much we can produce. Yeah. So in today's discussion, I just want to highlight this specific triangle where Aristotle's rhetorical triangle. I'm sure that you might be knowing about who is an Aristotle. He's into all areas. His ideas and his theories have been used cutting across. We looked at the skills that are required in 2020, that multidisciplinary skill, which Aristotle's theory had long back. His theories and his ideas have been used cutting across areas, cutting across specialization. So language department is not one exception, where it took the idea of Aristotle's rhetorical triangle, where he talked about ethos, pathos, and logos, and he tries to accommodate into communication aspect of it. And today, this is what we are trying to look at. Before I get into that, I just want to do a quick check with the participants. I'm sure that you guys get to know about what are receptive and productive skills, because that's the first takeaway that I want you guys to acquire out of this session: receptive and productive. So if you acquire good receptive, that will have a direct impact in your productive skills. So if that's clear, I just expect the student participants to please raise your hands, or you guys can speak up, or any question. You guys can respond in chat, or you guys can say. You guys got the idea of what is receptive and what is productive skills? That's the first takeaway that I want you guys to take out of this session. Yes, no? Yes, okay. Other students, okay? Okay, great. Great, okay, great. Thank you. Just to, I mean, this is just a check for me to, okay, yes, students are with me. So just to that, I'm just checking this. Okay. So the next takeaway is this specific slide. And then in the due course of our presentation, we'll be looking at this aspect. So where Aristotle's rhetorical triangle, where how ethos, pathos, and logos can impact in successful business communication, and how that in turn can impact your direct, managerial success. So what is ethos, pathos, and logos? Maybe that might look a technical term for now. So for which we'll just use the very common term, which is speaker, audience, and message. 1 second. Okay, so speaker, being a speaker, 1 second, it's not moving. One second, guys. Yeah. Audience. So what does being in first, when we want to give a speech, when you later, when you are into a managerial position, or you are in an you want to present an idea, first thing what we need to do is, first we should understand who is our target audience. Who is our audience? How are we going to address them? What is their specific need? How we can connect to the audience? So if you want to make a business presentation, or any, for that matter, any presentation, the first thing that we should understand or we should grasp is, who is our target audience? Whom are we going to address to? And what is their existing knowledge? What do they know? How we can inform them, or how we can make them acquire a better knowledge from what they have acquired. So what do they need? So that is something that we need to understand. And how can we connect to the audience? So what are the point of contact that we can connect to the audience? If I come and discuss with you guys about, talk about Java today, I'm sure that it won't make any sense, because being a management student, you should, I mean, my expertise in the field of communication, and then I can communicate better in communication aspects. So how you can connect with the audience, that aspect you need to get to understand. How much do they already know about being understanding the audience, what they really know earlier, and how we can bridge the gap between where they are and how we can move them from A to B, from their existing position to the next position. So we try to understand who is our target audience, how we can address to their specific need. It's not market all, where it has to be tailor made to each individual in the team that you're going to present going forward. So understand your audience, and then try to customize your information according to that. So understanding your audience is the first thing that being an not just for that matter business communicator, any communicator should acquire. And the second aspect is message. Once we understand who is our target audience, then we can understand, okay, what can be the message, what can be the content, how I can deliver my information, how I can inform, or I want to express, or I need to persuade, or does this message really required? So we need to understand these aspects. So what is the message? Who is my target audience? Based on my audience, my message would differ. The same PPT, if I happen to present it to a kindergarten, to a school students, the way I deliver the message would be different. The same message, if I happen to deliver to a PhD graduates, it would be different. So the point is, your audience defines the message. It's not your message defines your audience. So your audience, you need to understand them, and then based on which we need to customize our message. And second, we need to make sure whether the message is logical, whether it is being coherently organized. It should not be just zigzag. So the message has to be logically organized. I'm sure that you by now I've happened to go through your course outline, where you guys would have learned about what is business communication. There's a huge difference between a general communication and a business communication, where business communication is more goal oriented, where it is more formal. When it is more formal, when it is more goal oriented, then the message has to be logically and sequentially, it needs to be organized. And that's something this message has to be looked into. And that's, logically it should be connected. And second, factually, it should be relevant. We cannot just give some bogus information. Rather, it has to be more factual, right? And whether the message is clear or specific to our audience, that we need to check. So in Aristotle's rhetorical framework, rhetorical triangle, the first thing is knowing our audience, knowing who is our target audience for the speech, for the presentation. Second, based on that, we need to design and define our message. And based on after that, we have to see how we can present our thoughts. What do we want the audience to remember? What is the takeaway for the audience? As I said, I was very clear about two things I want you guys to take away from this presentation. One is, if you want to improve your productive skills, your direct contact of your receptive skills is what this first one. Second one is this is the second aspect, where Aristotle's rhetorical framework, or the triangle, where ethos, pathos, and logos, where audience defines the message, and based on the message, you have to define your speech or your delivery of your message. So what do you want the audience to remember, and how will you show your credibility? So building credibility is something which is very important. If I just come and talk to you about communication, and then if I'm not very much confident in what I speak, or if my voice is very feeble in what I say, I'm sure that it might not really make any big difference. So the point I'm trying to say is that when you talk about communication, when you are talking about your project, when you're talking about your research idea, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you have your research idea, if you want to make it into a business, then you should have that confidence when you present it. So you have to build that credibility. And how do you demonstrate that you are an authority of the subject in your area, so that you can easily build credibility with the audience, and then you can just get along with the content. So what do you have in common with the audience to create that bond, or the connect? I can check that. Yes. So now I believe that you guys can get connected with what is this ethos, pathos, and logos. So ethos is nothing but to put whatever we have seen earlier, to put it in one simple slide, where ethos is nothing but appeal to the credibility. How we can connect or build credibility to the audience. I'm sure that you guys would be knowing about the example of Mahatma Gandhi, when son and his mother went to Mahatma Gandhi, and then when they were trying to, when his mother was telling to Gandhi, stating that my son is eating a lot of sweets, please ask him to stop. Then after a week, Gandhi said, you come after a week, I'll inform your kid. Okay, the mother went home happily, and then she expect, okay, after a week, Gandhiji would be saying something big about to give a big lecture to our son, and then he'll stop eating sweets. That's what mom's perception. And then she went back home, and then she remembers properly. And then after a week, she visited Mahatma Gandhi, and then she asked, yeah, Gandhi, please teach my son not to eat sugar, or tell my son not to eat sugar or to sweets to a greater extent. Then Gandhi said, okay, child, you should not you should not eat sugar. That's not good for your health. That's it. Then the mom asked, sir, you could have, Gandhiji, you could have said this, even last week. Why you want us to come after a week? He said that I was eating sweet all these days. So when I'm eating all these days, I feel that's not the right thing to do, or to propagate to others. So preach what you say. So that credibility has to be there if you want to connect to the audience when you speak. So build that credibility and build that rapport in the initial stage as much as possible. Then pathos is nothing but creating that emotional connect. How you can touch, how you can connect to the audience. So try to connect to the audience emotion, so that you can capitalize the information as much as possible, and then you can just go along. And logos is nothing but logic. So logic is nothing but how we can emotionally connect, and how we can coherently organize the information. Logic is nothing but how we can sequentially organize our information, how we can coherently put across our information rather than presenting it in zigzag. So that's logos. So there are 3 steps that I want you guys to take away out of this presentation. That's if you want to make any presentation, first build that credibility, do that logic, have that logical connect with the audience. In terms of your presentation, have that emotional connect with the audience. So maybe going forward in cross-cultural communication, where you would be trying to understand how emotional connect can happen in different regions. So maybe we'll just look into that little later or in some day when we have an opportunity. So this is what, if you feel that your communication needs to be successful, if you feel that your communication needs to be reached your expected audience, this is the 3 steps where discussed by Aristotle, the philosopher. Yeah. So after this, I just want to bring it to you guys an interesting survey which tells about the significance of communication, where it might be wondering, when you speak or when we speak, it's just 7% of our spoken word is communicated. Just 7% of our spoken word. Whatever that I've been speaking, it's just 7 words, my voice, the verbal content that I'm giving. Whereas 38% revolves around, or the significance is given to the voice, the tone. Voice means with voice modulation, with the different voice modulation, rather than going in a monotonous voice, trying to pace it up and down. So that something plays a significant role. Your effective, using different mixture of voice doesn't mean mimicking. Voice means changing the pace in which that you speak, changing this volume with this 20 minutes is an actual attention span. That's why I expect every now and then I'm expecting you guys to participate, so that's why I expect brain sugar, and then you can get back to the class or you can get back to the engagement. Okay, 38 is to voice and tone, and 55 is your gesture. 55 is our body language. And that's the biggest limitation in today's situation, in today's condition. Whereas when your interview or when your classes happens physically, where your body language can communicate a lot. Whereas now, in this online world, our body language is confined to just 1/3 of ourselves. So body language, which means, as we all know, our gestures, our eye contact, the way we use our hands, body movement, all these aspects. So how we can enhance our body language during this online mode? The way we keep our frame, that in itself, that comes under body language, because that's the screen that is visible. So the background that you're having should be appropriate. And this is, I always believe in this. There's nothing right and wrong. There's only whether something is appropriate or not appropriate. When you mention anything in the class, that's what I'm sure that all your faculty members would be saying. So nothing right and wrong. There's only thing whether it is appropriate or not appropriate. So make sure that when you do, or when you go for an interview, or when you do your presentation in class, make sure that you have a decent background rather than having some, some weird pictures rather than having that. So the point I'm trying to say here is that we emphasize more on our spoken words. That's just 75%. Sorry, 7%. 38 is your tone and your voice, and 55% is your body language. So make sure that you use body language. Doesn't mean that, okay, you stand and dance. Body language is trying to say, try to look into the camera, try to look into the, rather than just these days in online classes, what happens, people, they'll open their desktop, the notes, and then they'll just read, or they'll just have it in a paper and then they just read it out. That should not be the case. Rather, prepare well, stay confident, and then just try to look into the camera, and then you guys can speak, have a proper background, and then as and when required, use your proper gestures, appropriate gestures, and then I'm sure that will make a better impact, and your voice again plays a significant role. Let's not have a monotonous speech. Yes? Any question? Yes. As we all know, communication is giving and receiving information, but communication is not just confined to that. I'm sure that some of my students who are attending the session, they would understand to me, or they can really go back to the weird action that I used to do in my class. Communication is all about doing or creating an impact. Communication is not just giving and receiving information. Communication is about creating that impact. So how to create that impact is something that we need to. So we looked at what does communicate, I mean, how we can improve our productive skills. We looked at what are the strategies that we need to do, and let us look at how we can create that impact in our communication that makes our managerial success. So creating impact is the key thing for communication. Communication is no longer just giving information or receiving information for the purpose of exchanging ideas or thought. Communication is more about creating that impact. How better we can create that impact, that successful we are at our presentation. So most successful people, the most powerful, effective communication is the most powerful tool, not just in personal life, even in our professional life, which I'm sure that you all would agree to. So empower you to influence others. So effective communication helps us to empower, not just because being a manager, being a business manager in your company or team leader, our communication, we need to influence others, we need to inform others, we need to put across our message to the other people. In that case, if we don't have an effective communication, that will lead to a setback. I happen to have an interaction with few corporate people who do placement training and who do placements during, in management institution. I had a close contact with few of them during my, in my PhD studies about that. I looked at managerial communication. When I happen to look at interact with managers, the one thing I ask them, what is the key thing that you look for when a student or when a candidate comes for a placement drive? What do you look into them? You know what their answer? What could be the answer? Okay, let me put across this to you guys. What do you think that the company or the person who is coming to recruit you would look into you? What would they look into you? You guys can speak, or you guys can put that in chat box. What do you guys think that they will look into you? I hope you guys are listening. Quality, great. Communication, fantastic. Skills, communication and ability, capability to manage situation, fantastic. Good. Good. I'm expecting a little more response because we are halfway through. Any more skills? Okay. Guys, don't think that when some of your friends have answered what you think, you can also say the same thing, because group discussion is about that. Okay, fine. So creative thinking, fantastic, fantastic. Okay, that's the point where Nandini, right? Okay, yeah. Attitude. Yes. It's the attitude. It's not the skill set that we acquired. It's not the certificate. Sir, I have these many courses that are certificate, these many this certificate. I'm expertise in these aspect. if we show our attitude? No. Ready to learn attitude. I know top firms, they are looking for people who exhibit. Interview is all about exhibiting our right attitude. People think that, okay, interview, it's not just about telecasting or broadcasting our skill sets. Yes, in a way, but more precisely, how we are telecasting, how we are presenting. That's what, again, soft skills. Preparing fantastic biryani is not that matter. How we are serving matters the most. So attitude is very, very, very important for a successful placement, or to be a successful manager or an employer or a team leader, whoever for that matter be. Right attitude is something that's very important for an effective communication. Yes. So if you want to isolate yourself, one quick thing is that if you mess up with your communication, that's the best way. One of the quickest way to alienate yourself from the other people is to have an unsuccessful communication. 80% of the problem in the workplace are communication related. So when I happen to interact with those managers, they are not worried about skill set. Sir, if even students are not equipped with the skill set, adequate skill set, if they are ready to learn, we are ready to teach them. We are ready to give them a training program, induction program for them, and then we can just pull them across. But if they don't have that right attitude to learn, it's highly impossible for us to teach. It's highly impossible for them to train. So that's the point, and that's the point I want you guys to drive away. That's the third point that I want you guys to take away. Fourth point for that matter. You guys have to exhibit right attitude when you present in front of your placements, or in front of your team, or in front of your managers, anyone. Yes, okay. I'm sure that it will take a little time to move the slides, because whenever I look at the chat box, it takes time. So let's give it a while. I guess I'm making sense, and then I guess you guys can connect to whatever we are discussing. I hope. Give me a minute. I'm trying to change the slides. Guys, any question till now? You guys can say, okay. Yes. So as we all know, effective business communication, we just came across earlier or previously, where there's a huge difference between a general communication and a business communication. General communication can be informal. It does not, or it need not have a goal or a purpose or an objective, whereas business communication have a set or a defined goal or an objective to reach. So effective communication is how an employee or a manager interact to reach the organizational goal. So as I said earlier, business communication is more goal driven, it's more objective driven, it's more focused. So purpose is to improve organizational practice and reduce error. So in business communication, as much as we reduce, I'm sure that you all would agree, or even for that matter, when I happen to interact with those corporate people, managers, people who is not having effective communication are the one who are lagging behind in their managerial role. Or to put it in an affirmative tone, people who have effective communication move high in their managerial ladder as early as possible. Their success rate or their growth rate is comparatively higher than a manager whose communication proficiency is relatively less. So the point I'm trying to say here is, effective communication or effective business communication is more goal oriented, it's more formal, it's more objective driven. So in that case, we have to make our communication when we happen to interact in a corporate world. So the flow of communication in an organization goes in this way, where it moves from upward communication, downward communication, lateral communication, and diagonal communication or grapevine communication. I'm sure you might be knowing all these things, but to put it in, to define it in one sentence, upward communication is nothing but communication that happens from an employer to a higher authority, where it moves from a lower level manager to the senior level manager, or to the CEOs, or to the CXOs. So it moves upward, where the communication, my PhD study is about that, where I looked at the managerial difference in managerial communication in Indian IT company. So what sort of communication strategy that happens when it moves from upward communication, when it's from downward communication? What sort of linguistic strategy do they use? So downward communication is communication that comes from the top level managers to the subordinates. So you might be wondering, the language choice for each of these aspects differs completely. The communication that goes in an upward, so the language that is being used in an upward communication is absolutely different from the language that's being communicated from downward to a subordinate communication. So there's a theory called accommodative theory. What is accommodative theory? Accommodative theory is choosing or accommodating our language style and our language choice according to the context or according to the hierarchy that we are writing to. Lateral communication or horizontal or communication is communicating to our colleagues who are in the same managerial cadre or who are in the same position, is what lateral communication or hierarchical communication. Whereas diagonal communication or grapevine communication is nothing but communication. It won't follow any specific protocol that happens all across. It's more an informal communication. So these are the 4 styles of communication in an organization, or the way communication flows in an organization. So I've used the word accommodative theory. Accommodative theory is nothing but accommodating our linguistic choice according to the person that we are communicating. When we feel that when we are trying to communicate within the internal communication, the language choice would be differ. When we happen to communicate to an external audience, to our potential clients, then the language choice that we use would be different. So that's where I'm trying to say accommodative theory, where we need to accommodate our language style according to the flow of communication, according to the need. And then where does most of the managers time, where do they generally spend at? So if you look at 46% of managers' time in a workplace is spent with subordinates, delegating work, giving work. So you guys are postgraduate management students. So going forward, when you are in a managerial position, you have to look into these aspects when you're trying to communicate. Go back to the facts, tidbits that we looked at. 80% of organization face communication related issues, and then 29% face a lot of communication related issue. 60% of an employee face at least one communication related issue in an organization. So when you have effective communication, when you can put your message across successfully, then you will be successful in your role. So 46% of your time would be, you would be communicating with your subordinates, 23% to the external worlds, 17% to the internal within the organization, to the other stakeholders, and 14% would be with the superiors. And this may differ across to specialization, across to areas. Maybe management, manufacturing sector might be having different. This is an overall average is what we have taken, but it has been mentioned. Yes, so that's how your manager's communication. So you need to accommodate your language style according to the persons that you're talking with. Okay, so this is we are coming to an end, sir. How long I have, sir, the timing?
Sir, you can go on, sir. We have no restrictions as such.
Okay, sir. Yeah, thank you. So I'll just take another 5 to 10 minutes maximum. So yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, so here is an interesting slide where it talks about information channel richness. So how does this works? So the richness of information is as much the close proximal level that we have between the listener and the speaker, the richness would be higher. When there's a proximal level between the speaker and the listener is low, then we'll have low channel richness. So if you look at formal memos or letters where the personal contact between the sender and the receiver is less, so that comes under low channel richness. Whereas if you look at face-to-face communication or video conferencing, where we can communicate directly with the audience, so both the listener and speaker are at the same space, so the high richness possibility can happen. So information channel richness is about that. So we'll look into that aspect. So if you look at information channel richness chart, where face-to-face conversation is under a high richness factor, because both the listener and speaker are at the same place, whereas video conferencing is at the high information richness, where telephone, where both of them are listening and both of them are responding back. So it is also at the high end of the information richness channel. And email is under the intermediate level. It's not having a huge information richness, but not that low as we have a written document or a memo or a letter. Whereas a mobile device these days, social media communication is also, but most organization would not acquire or appreciate social media communication, but these days it has been accepted. But any official information that has to be communicated, email is what is being preferred in most organization in today's world. So in that case, mobile device is under the information richness is relatively less. Blog is in the medium level, whereas letter is also at the medium level. Whereas written document, we don't know who is the audio, who has written, who is the author, and who is reading. So we might not know. So in that case, the information richness would be relatively less. So this is the so you need to choose. Here comes there's a academician and a philosopher, and a theoretician who is McCarthy, where he talks about your information decides your message, or for that matter, your medium defines your message. What medium that we choose to convey our message. If you want to convey a factual information, the medium that we choose would be different. If you want information that we need to have an emotional connect, the medium that we have to choose should be different. If you want to use a factual information, written communication can go well. That's why when you go for a meeting, agenda would be prepared, minutes of the meeting would be prepared, because the key points are being discussed. When you want to have an emotional connect, when you want to build rapport, then there oral communication can play a significant role. If you look at your medium defines, or your medium determines your message, where your medium defines what, your message defines what medium that you want to choose. Verbal communications are a better way to convey your feelings, whereas written communication is a better way to convey facts and figures. Because in verbal communication, facts and figures would be a little difficult for us to understand. In verbal, whereas in written, we have the tangible evidence we can refer back later also. When we want to connect our emotion and feelings, written communication have a lesser significance, whereas oral communication or verbal communication has a greater significance. So we need to choose our message. We need to choose our medium according to our message. That's by McCarthy. So this is again a key takeaway that I want you guys to drive home, where your medium should be defined or determined by the message that you choose. So here is a little chart where it talks about to convey facts, written would be an appropriate mode. To provide a permanent record, written message is being preferred. When you need to have a timely response, written record would be there, because when you just speak, people would not have an evidence of what you said. So a written record would make a lot of sense in a business communication. As we know, as we looked at earlier, it's more formal. When you do not need an immediate feedback, written communication. Whereas when you look at verbal communication, to convey emotion, when you do not need a permanent record, verbal communication, when the matter is urgent. Sometimes when we need a quick feedback or when we need a quick information, it's not appropriate. I mean, it's not relevant to write an email and then to he receives it or she receives it and then reply back to that email. Rather, in that matter or during that instances where we need to call them up and then we need to communicate that information, though we send out an email. So if you need a quick response, verbal communication can have a better reach. So that medium can be, here the message is urgent. So you're choosing verbal as the medium. I mean, over a phone call or a face-to-face conversation. When you need an immediate feedback is also verbal communication would be preferred. So again, the tone of communication, the emphasis, the intonation where you keep everywhere defines the message or the communication that you say. I'm sure that you guys can have a look at it and then how meaning differs based on the intonation, based on the voice modulation that you have on a specific word. I did not tell John that you were late. It's not me who said, someone. I did not tell John you were late. This did not happen. I did not tell John you were late. I didn't say that. I didn't verbally pronounce it. Rather, I might have implied it in a different other cues. I didn't tell John you were late. Maybe someone else, maybe Kumar, maybe Tamilarasan, someone else. I didn't tell you were late. Maybe someone else. I didn't tell John you were late. Maybe someone else. So the emphasis when you communicate, where you are having your emphasis during a business communication or during a managerial communication, for that matter, any general communication, it connotates a different meaning. So we need to be cautious about that as well. So communication does not stop after we deliver our message. It actually starts. Do you guys agree? Yes. A person's competence and a person's effectiveness are based on the ability to communicate effectively. Communication isn't the problem, whereas how we communicate, competency is not the problem. How we communicate is the real problem. So competency, we can communicate. As I said, communication is a process. If we don't have the competence, I can acquire over a period of time. But how we are practicing it, how we are moving towards that matters the most. Competency isn't the problem, rather how we communicate matters. That needs quite a lot of practice based on the steps that we have discussed. If your productive skill needs to be improved, your receptive needs to, skill has to be upgraded, updated, has to be acquired. If you have a decent communication, how to form a persuasive communication, how to have an effective communication, follow the protocol. Know who is your audience. Based on your audience, choose your message. Choosing the message, choose how you can deliver it. That's the second step. Then communication is not just conveying information, rather communication is all about creating an impact. Communication is about conveying, not just conveying, creating that impact is also equally important. Business communication has a direct objective. The objective has to be served. So that's it from my end. So these are the few references that I have used, and then I'm open for questions if there is any. I'm really looking forward for questions. So after this question, I'll just share a quick quiz based on the learnings that you guys had. I'll just put it in the chat box. You guys can respond. Quiz based on whatever that we have learned. You guys can respond little later as well. I have posted in the chat box. You guys can respond. And if you have any questions, yes, please.
Shiraman, we can keep it open.
Yes, sir. It's open.
Yeah.
Yes. I hope I made some sense. It could connect to some, to the audience. So if there's any question, you feel free to unmute and say.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, hi.
I'm calling to from TG Academy. Sir,
Yes,
my question is how to learn more languages. Which is the best way to learn fast?
Yeah, to be a polyglot, to acquire more language. Simple, how we acquire our mother tongue. How did we acquire our mother tongue?
Listening, then speaking.
Yes. Exactly. Listening is the first step. I'm from Madurai, Tamil Nadu. When I happened to visit 2014 to Hyderabad, I am clueless about Telugu. I don't know Telugu, but how I acquired Telugu. It's by being here in the city, listening to a lot of Telugu, listening to that language. Listening makes listening makes anyone to acquire any language. So if you happen to be in Orissa, then you can pick up Odia language fastly. If you've been in West Bengal, you can acquire that language, Bengali. So being acquainted to that language, being immersing ourselves to that particular language context is what the strategy that we can adapt to make you to familiarize or to learn that language, whatever for that might be. It's not just restricted to Tamil or to, for that matter, to Malayalam or to Kannada, any language. Did I answer your question, Kalimuthu? If you're not clear, you can just, I can give you, if you want to know the strategy, I can suggest, or if is it okay?
Yes, sir, I understood, sir.
Yes. Get exposed to it. Thank you. Any more questions?
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Kirbagaran. Yes.
Hi, sir. First of all, thank you for a wonderful session, sir.
Thank you, Kirbagaran. So kind of you.
So my question is, what are the barriers and how we can solve it to make communication more effective in business?
Yes. Barriers in terms of speaking?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So how we can overcome the barriers in communication? So especially when it comes to speaking, again, language is a process. Getting exposed to that is something that, if you are for successful communication, there are two things: content and confidence. If you have good content, if you are going to do a presentation, a boardroom presentation next day, then get the content. What generally we do is that we prepare the day before. We prepare just half an hour before it. Prepare the content, get acquainted to it, whatever that you're going to speak, get the clarity. Once you have the content, confidence will automatically, you will get the confidence, and that can really make you to be an effective speaker. You can be successful in that regard. So the point I'm trying to restate here is that to have a successful communication in regards to speaking, in regards to boardroom, content and confident are the two primary aspects that we need to primarily focus on. Content, if we are not very much sure, prepare well in advance, practice as much as possible, present it. And then there's a quick exercise that generally people would, for those who are in the formative stage for their communication improvement, they would say that taking a long deep breath. When we are nervous during a presentation, when we are in the formative stage, taking a long deep breath has a scientific reason, has a scientific proof how that can make you feel calm. Because when you are nervous, when you are anxious, our oxygen flow in the body would not go properly. It won't reach to our brain properly. So when we take a long deep breath, the oxygen flow will be proper. In that case, your brain will be active and you feel more confident. And second thing, having a pleasing smile is the best strategy to connect to the audience in a best way, and that will also give and psychological confidence, and that will evade the barrier that we face during our communication. So these are the two things, Kirbakaran.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I hope I have answered. Yes. Any questions?
Good morning, sir. I'm Akhilesh from DJME.
Yes, Akhilesh.
Sir, how does communication make a business successful?
Yeah, absolutely. Communication is like the lifeblood of any successful business. If like how blood functions in our body is communication is as significant as that. If the communication is not successful, the business would go failure without any second thought. So if, for example, if we look at from a managerial perspective, there are a lot of factual evidences where a person who is having such effective communication can grow high in their managerial ladder, when someone who is not having a successful communication or an effective communication, their or his or her managerial growth would be relatively less than a person who is having. So in that case, it has a direct contact. Who will be in a better managerial position? When one who has a successful communication, that will have a direct impact in the business or the organizational growth as well. So communication, effective communication and business growth are synonymous to a greater extent. Akhilesh?
Yeah, Devinandini, you can come in. Your raising your hand.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes,
I'm
Nandini.
Devinandini, currently pursuing MBA at DJ Academy.
Yes.
Thank you for wonderful session, sir. And my question is it more important to be a good listener or a good communicator, sir?
Especially when we are at the formative stage, it's a fantastic question. Being a good listener makes us a better speaker. As much as we learn, that much we exposed. నాకు ఇప్పుడు తెలుగు వచ్చింది, ఐ మీన్ హౌ ఐ హ్యావ్ లెర్న్డ్ తెలుగు. నాకు ఇప్పుడు తెలుగు వచ్చింది ఎట్లా అంటే, నేను తెలుగు ఇక్కడ వచ్చి నేర్చుకున్న తర్వాత ఐ కెన్ స్పీక్. సో ద పాయింట్ ఐఎమ్ ట్రైంగ్ టు సే హియర్ ఇస్, ఐ మీన్ ఐ మైట్ బి రాంగ్, మై ఎక్స్పోజర్ ఇస్ యాజ్ లెస్. If I have even better exposure, then I can communicate even better. I don't know to read Telugu, I don't know to write in Telugu, but I have acquired my speaking by listening. As much as we familiarize, that much that we can be proficient. As much as we listen, that much we can be proficient. So the point is, it's, as I said, it's a ever-ending process. If you acquire a lot, that much it will have a direct impact in your productive skill. That receptive will have a direct impact. Yes, Nandini?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
Professor Dinesh.
Yes.
I am Dr. Nambi from DJ Academy faculty.
Hello, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for the wonderful session.
Thank you, sir.
But I have some question regarding
Yes, sir.
the cognitive flexibility that we were talking about early in the presentation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You said that cognitive flexibility is one of the skill that is latest requirement.
Yes.
And as far as I know,
yes,
cognitive flexibility is your ability to adapt your behavior and thinking in response to the environment.
Yes.
You are talking about this is something related to the interdisciplinary knowledge. Can you please throw more light about it?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, in the World Economic Forum, where the top 21st century skills that are being required for a manager, they have mentioned about cognitive flexibility. So, cognitive flexibility, yes, sir, what you said is exactly right. Our thought process to different discipline. So, what I try to connect is that certain people, when they happen to get accustomed to a different devices, for example, for that matter, there are few faculties, a few people, even in the corporate world, senior faculties, it was quite difficult for them to get adapted or get accommodated with the technology in the initial stage, because we were not exposed to the technology, I mean teaching with technology. So that was a stumbling block. And I know there are quite a few faculties in premier institutions, they don't take classes online. They've been very choosy with regards to their subject delivery. They said that, okay, even I'll take leave until the class becomes normal. There are faculties in the current situation. So the point I'm trying to say here is that cognitive flexibility is when we get to know about new information, we should try to adapt to it and then we should try to accommodate it, and then we should try to get used to that, especially in our area. So for which I try to bring in the interdisciplinary aspect of it. But yes, interdisciplinary is a broader aspect, but in cognitive flexibility, I just try to give that example, but I didn't directly comment on that specific aspect, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Yes, but it's cognitive. Cognitive flexibility is what you exactly said.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Yes, Rohit.
So I'm Rohit from DJ Academy, sir, first year.
Yes, Rohit. Yes, Rohit.
What are the factors improve teamwork and success for?
To improve teamwork and success, yes. First we need to get used to the team. First we need to understand what is our ability to where we can be more productive. Are we productive with an individual aspect, or if you want to be we'll be more productive when we work in a team? First, we need to understand our individual style, and based on which we need to adapt. And there's a simple definition for being an introvert and an extrovert. There's a little misconception here. Introvert means people will say that they won't speak much. Actually, it's not. Introvert means people who can speak, but they lose energy when they speak. Whereas extrovert gain energy when they speak. Extrovert is someone who they gain energy when they speak, so they tend to speak a lot. Whereas an introvert tend to speak less. Sorry, introvert speaks, but they lose energy when they speak. So that's the difference. So you need to understand what style that you can adapt, and then accordingly you can use it. So to improve your team working skill, getting used to it is something that you have to come out from your boundaries. You cannot just be in our own cocoons. Try to take one baby step. Try to, if you are an introvert, if you feel you are an introvert, try to talk, mingle, form a group of people, have a small group, try to have a discussion. If you feel that you are finding it difficult on a specific subject, have a group discussion with them. Try to get his or her, your team's information. And from there, you can start from that baby step. And from that familiarization, you get used to that. And that, you being an introvert, you can be an extrovert. You losing energy, you can gain energy going forward. So to improve your team working skill, maybe we can have, that's an extensive topic. We can have workshop as well going forward. If time permits, when your schedules are available, there's a separate module. So to improve to put it in simple term, start with the baby step. If you feel you are an introvert, try to form a group among yourself, discuss about a specific topic, get to understand different opinion, and try to, I believe you would be doing your industry project or industry report. I believe during that you would be doing it in group work. So actively engage in a group work and then try to see how it works.
Okay, sir.
Okay, Logan. Thank you.
Yes, Sindhura.
Yes, Sindhura.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. The session was really interesting, sir.
Thank you,
Sir,
Thank
few
you.
people have clear idea about the topic they speak, but they feel language as a barrier. At such times, what can they do to improve their communication, sir?
Yes, Sindhura. Yeah, that's also a common problem. With most of us in our formative stage would face. So when we feel that we are a little anxious about, especially with regards to language, practice it. Practice it in front of your team. For example, you are a group of 4 to 5 members in your team in your friends community. After you prepare your content, present it in front of 1 or 2 people with the for that matter, you just need 5,000 words to have a decent communication. Even just with 5,000 words, you can have a flawless communication. You can convey your information successfully. And a survey says a person who completed 12th standard is exposed with 10,000 vocabularies. Then you might be wondering, sir, you are saying 5,000 and then we have acquired 10,000. What, sir? Yes. Here comes the role of active and passive vocabulary. We would have learned it But how many of them are in our active vocabulary? How many of them are in our repository? Learning vocabulary and meeting people are one and the same. As much as we familiarize with them, that much we get to know about that person more. When we learn a vocabulary and then when we just leave it at a state, then our learning will also be, our acquaintance to that word would also be limited. So when you learn vocabulary, when you learn words, so you have adequate vocabulary in your buckets. What you need to do is that you try to use it, and that usage can definitely make you to be wade through this limitation when you are in a formative stage. So practice 1 or 2 times, and then bring in your active vocabulary, your passive vocabulary to active vocabulary. These 2 steps definitely will bring back your language proficiency, because language, once who completed 12th standard, definitely you have an adequate language to communicate your basic information, especially when you have the content ready. I'm sure that language might not be a problem, but just communicating a thought, you might need little attention. So for which you're bringing back your passive vocabulary to active vocabulary can make the wonder, Sindhura.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yes.
Sir, there's a question chat from Nitya. How to improve LSRW skills for self-improvement?
LSRW, yes. The strategy that we can, that I adapted during my formative stage, maybe I'll just give you that anecdote. I'm sure that may be helpful. What I used to do was, for example, I just did an activity for a while, and then that has had a huge impact in my language proficiency. What I did was, for example, if I wake up at 6 o'clock is my regular waking up time, for the next 48 days, I made sure that I wake up 1 hour early. This is what I practice, so I'm just trying to comment on that. So I wake up 1 hour early. Early in the morning, I focus 15 minutes for each of these skills. 15 minutes, I made sure that I listen to something in English. After listening to that, I read something in English. After that, I use my earphones, and then I try to, as if I'm talking over a phone, I talk with me. Actually, to be honest, I spoke to me in English for 15 minutes, and then by that day, I'll write whatever that I have read and whatever that I have listened, and then I write it. And that definitely I can say that has a direct and then huge impact in my language proficiency. To give it in macro perspective, to improve your speaking proficiency, I'm sure that most of you would be having this question. To improve your speaking proficiency, get used to Netflix. These days it's quite common. Watch Netflix serials that can have a direct impact. Your mother tongue influence, our mother tongue influence can be hugely overcome. It's not a major problem when we have mother tongue influence. Let's not get worried, because we are huge in population. Then Indian English is getting standardized, so nothing wrong unless our communication is being communicated properly. So to overcome our mother tongue influence and to have better speaking proficiency, listening in English, listening can have a greater impact, and watching Netflix definitely would have a better impact as well. So exposure is what I'm trying to say.
This is Balasubramanian from Indian Institute of Materials Management, Bangalore.
Hello, sir. Hi, sir.
I just wanted to know, see, people even with very good communication skills, they fail in public speaking.
Yes.
How do you manage it, or what is your advice for them?
Yes. So even with communication, even with the good communication skill, they fail at public speaking. Right, sir? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yeah. So people who are with a better communication skill, it's like the exposure is what, getting used to it. What happens generally is that Abdul Kalam once he said that even when you, after being a president of India, when he happened to be a faculty at Anna University, whenever he entered into a class, he have this butterfly effect. So that's something which is very common. And then butterfly effect, I mean, we have that jittery feel. So this taking a long deep breath, having a pleasing smile is the strategy. I'm in my formative stage. I have this very often during my formative stage, though my PhD is in language development, in communication. I have it quite some. So what I used to do is that the same exercise, what Kalam also have mentioned the same thing in one of his lecture when he gave it to a school. Taking a long deep breath will make the body oxygen flow better, and then that can have a better impact, is my direct answer, sir. But maybe I'll just read a little bit more, and then maybe I can just comment for your question, little brief, sir, later. Okay, sir. Yes.
Sir, I think there are no more questions. I will ask one question, sir.
Yes, sir, please.
In this globalized world, people are so having a lot of aspiration moving into Japan and Germany, right?
Yes,
you can see a lot of engineering institutions offering Japanese language and German language, right? So knowing one foreign language is important. So as far as our country is concerned, English is quite important.
Yes.
So how do you see this perspective in the current trend?
Yes, sir. I mean, like, this is something which is maybe for now we have this Japanese and then German, and also I feel that Chinese is also getting a lot of momentum these days. Chinese language is also being a lot of demand for Chinese as well. So this demand is quite common, and then especially in the globalized world, this is pretty common. And then having familiarized with having aquantine with different language broadens our horizon, and then having biggest language and culture are inseparable. When we learn about Japanese language, ultimately we'll try to understand their cultural aspect as well. That will enlarge our thought process and our communication ability as well, and that will have a direct impact the way that we communicate as well. So we'll try to understand the intercultural differences and cross-cultural differences as well in that aspect, and then that will have our personal growth as well, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
So there are no more questions. Shall we wrap up, sir?
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Indeed, it was a wonderful learning session. As you said, communication is like by riding a bicycle. No, if you don't practice it regularly, I think we'll miss out. Thank you, sir. I am sure students must have got a lot of insights from your session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now let me call Kribakaran to propose the formal vote of thanks.
Good afternoon to all. It's my privilege to propose vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of those who worked really hard to make this session happen. On behalf of my college, I thank the speaker of the day, Professor A. Dinesh, for sparing his valuable time in his busiest schedule. Today, we had opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this will surely be going to encourage us in future endeavors. Thanks to our beloved director, Dr. A.G.V. Narayanan, our chief executive, Captain Senthil Kumar, and our faculty members for providing continuous support and encouragement. I also thank our students and students from other institutions for making this session a success. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. It was indeed a great, nice collaborating with the DG Academy. So thank you for this opportunity, sir. It was nice interaction. Your students were really, with their questions, they asked a lot. So it was so kind of them, and then looking forward for more such opportunities. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I have shared the questionnaire. I've shared the feedback form. If the participants can